Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Foot Bros podcast, brought to you by the Shell Corporation, with your host, the three-time championship winning coach of The Walking Dead, Nick Young, and the most jacked fantasy owner to ever play the game, coach of the Timmy Titans, Tim Young. Now, let's get into some fantasy talk. Hello and welcome in to the very first episode of the Foot Bros podcast. I'm your host Tim Young with the Timmy Titans, and this is Nick Young of The Walking Dead. We're here leading up to the draft to break down each team to see who should be the keepers, what their draft strategy should be, and some player analysis. So today, with the first pick in the draft, we have Lombardi Trophy. So Lombardi Trophy, 2 years running, worst team. Nick, what do you think their chances are this year?
Better. Can't be worse, right?
Can't be.
Can't do worse than dead last.
Unless you pick Christian McCaffrey first overall again, and he decides to get hurt and don't play him once all season. So he has that possibility. Going into last year's season, what did you think about his overall, besides the Christian McCaffrey getting hurt and ruining his season? How he played it as an owner?
Yeah, I think he lost, maybe lost interest a little bit after McCaffrey died on him. But he did grab Mike Davis, who carried him through a couple games, and did make some trades. He did come back and show a little life. And
guy's a tough negotiator.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. He was standing by Christian McCaffrey and really wanted him to pay off. Coming up to the trade deadline, really, I pushed to get him, and we had some good back and forth. And I really regret making the trade because he has my first round pick, so he goes into the draft with two first rounders.
Yep.
His first overall, and then my 10th pick. So I'm without a first round pick now. But how do you think he should capitalize on those two first round picks? Do you think he should take Christian McCaffrey again at number one?
So there's a strong argument to make for going there again to try.
Do you go back to that well that screwed you over though?
I probably wouldn't, although I do love me McCaffrey. I don't think he'll go that direction. I'm pretty sure in our Superflex league, Mahomes has shown his value again and again, and really tough to argue against taking him with that number one overall pick there. Really locking down your quarterback and still have another pick for a top end running back in the first round. I think that's the way to go. We'll see what he decides, and maybe he does want to give McCaffrey another shot.
I mean, is Kamara even in the conversation, or Cook over Mahomes, or do you feel like Mahomes is really the player that you would go after and that he should?
I think that Mahomes is the way to go. I really do. Dalvin Cook is definitely a strong contender. Him being a Packers fan, I don't know if he'll go that direction. But yeah, Dalvin Cook is certainly in the conversation. But you know, in July here, all cheat sheets have Christian McCaffrey and Patrick Mahomes as number one and number two picks, and it would not surprise me to see him go one down that cheat sheet and skip McCaffrey and go right to Mahomes, and I wouldn't blame him at all. I think it's a good pick.
Well, looking at his keepers for next year, none of them would cost him a first-round pick. The highest keeper would be Cooper Kupp at a second-round pick. Do you think Cooper Kupp is worth that second-round keeper pick?
I definitely don't. So I'll launch a little bit into my N.A.V score.
Oh,
here.
What does N.A.V stand for, Nick?
N.A.V is Nick's arbitrary value. Nick's assigned value. It's mostly
very scientific.
But I tried to put a number on how I value each of the keepers and where they so what their draft position is, what their average draft position is across all leagues right now. And it's July. That'll move around quite a lot. But based on their average draft position and where you get to keep them, how would you quantify that? What kind of value does it present?
So where does Cooper Kupp fall on that scale?
Very close to last.
I was going to say, his value is not great. I mean, he's projected going in the 5th round, and taking him as a 2nd-round pick just doesn't seem worth it.
Yeah. No, I like Cooper Kupp a lot.
Sure.
I think that he's going to have a nice season with Stafford there, and he'll definitely be a player to keep an eye on and target during the draft, but not at a 2nd-round value. Even with multiple early picks, Cooper Kupp in the 2nd round doesn't make any sense.
So according to N.A.V, what's the best value on his team?
So the best value would be Mike Davis in the 11th.
Okay. I don't love that, but okay.
Mike Davis is the starting running back for Atlanta. Things could not have gone better for Mike Davis this offseason. He's not in that backup role in Carolina. They set him free, latches on to Atlanta, where he is the top back. They didn't address running back position during the draft. So it is his backfield right now. They signed Cordarrelle Patterson, who's not going to do anything.
They're going to give him some touches, I would think. But I think more of a special teams guy and end around, different things like that. He's going to hurt him a little bit. But Ito Smith, that doesn't worry him? Or do you think the Ito Smith project is done in Atlanta?
It is. He's actually on another team now.
Isn't he? Where's he at?
I forget where he went, but he is not with Atlanta any longer.
Well, there goes my
Yeah.
argument. So Mike Davis, very good keeper in that regard then. I didn't have him on my radar. For my keepers, I think
That's something that the N.A.V score reveals. Yep. That's
way to go,
value
N.A.V.
there. Yep.
Is this going to be an early access, or is this in beta for the rest of the league, or is this something that is exclusive to the Foot Bros podcast?
Oh, this is exclusive.
That's great.
Yeah, nobody else has these numbers.
You've heard it here first.
This isn't Fantasy Pros or ESPN or this is.
It's all garbage.
All Nick.
Well, that's exciting to hear for the rest.
To put a meaningless number on it, Mike Davis's N.A.V score is 106.98.
Oh, that sounds pretty good.
It does. You don't know what the upper end of the scale there
I
is.
don't. But what about Baker Mayfield? Where does he fall?
Ooh, Baker is at a minus 102.
That sounds bad.
It is. So he has a better chance of just drafting Baker Mayfield at a similar position to where he's at right now. For what it would cost to keep Baker, he's better off tossing him back in and seeing if he can grab him again.
So I have him projected going in the 5th round for Baker Mayfield, and his keeper value would be a 4th round. So to your point, I think he can wait to get him.
Yep.
I think he was on the fringe for me of who to be the keeper. But to your point, I think Mike Davis is probably a good value thanks to the N.A.V. CeeDee Lamb is the other one that I had in mind for a keeper. What are your thoughts on Dak Prescott coming back, Ezekiel Elliott healthy, offensive line healthy? Is this CeeDee Lamb's? Is he wide receiver 1 or is he wide receiver 2 in your
Not
team?
yet. But I do believe that the Cowboys, just like early last season, they're going to be overall a bad team that's going to be forced to put up points, both in the air or little resurgence for Zeke too. The whole offense should be looking better than it did under Ben DiNucci.
Well, that's the thing with fantasy is that you really want to look for teams that have offenses that can score and defenses that are terrible.
Definitely.
So that's why the Titans were good last year for fantasy owners, because their defense wasn't there. So they had to really, they controlled the pace of the game with Derrick Henry. But Atlanta's been the same song and dance for the past couple years, that their offense has to put up these points, and their defense just can't stop anybody. So they get into these high-scoring shootouts, which is ultimately what you want to look for. So that's where I think CeeDee Lamb is really going to shine, and pretty much all the Cowboy options for fantasy next year.
He made an impact early last year. Dak seemed to make a connection with him right away, and I think he steps right back into that role. I think that he'll put up very good numbers, and he'll return value on that 6th-round pick.
So usually for a starting wide receiver, they're seeing about 80+% of snaps. He was around 64 as a rookie. Do you expect him to be on the field as that wide receiver 1, getting those 80%, or around that 65% still in a slot
I think
position?
he'll be at that 65% still.
Okay.
I do think that he'll he'll continue, at least early on this season. I think by October, November, he'll be in that 80% spot. But he'll start off a little slower.
Great. Well, I think those were my two keepers. Anyone else that you wanted to target from your N.A.V that came up as a target?
No, those are the two that I pegged as keepers there. CeeDee Lamb scores a 74 on my N.A.V. That's
That sounds like a good score.
right. So not quite as good a value as Mike Davis, even though CeeDee Lamb is the player that I'd rather have on my team. The value of keeping Mike Davis in the 11th gets you that high N.A.V score there.
What are your thoughts on Teddy Bridgewater in Denver? Does he start all year, or is it Drew Lock's team?
I think it's Drew Lock's team. I do.
But why give Teddy that much money? Why send him there? Why make any kind of effort to bring him in just as a viable backup?
Yeah, there's going to be a QB battle. They want Drew Lock to win it. They want that draft pick to pay off. John Elway likes Drew Lock, and that's the way they want to go. But they're smart enough to know that he hasn't shown it, and that Teddy Bridgewater can keep them from losing, even if it's not win them some games. He'll keep them in the game, keep them alive and in the playoff hunt.
One other interesting player I wanted to point out on this team was Evan Engram. He had a bit of a fall from grace. He was drafted pretty early for a tight end last year in the 6th round, projected to go in the 11th. Average end of season, he's not even making my top 12 for tight ends. I don't think he has it, or it's not with the Giants or something.
No, and especially with the way that the Giants upgraded the receiving core in general. They were pretty strong at receiver already when they go get Kenny Golladay. They drafted Kadarius Toney or whatever.
And they have Kyle Rudolph there that can be that blocking tight end who's been
Rudolph too.
proven that he's a red zone threat. So, I mean, does Evan Engram have a spot on your roster, or is it someone that you would target late round?
No, probably not. Even in the late round, I think there's some guys that I like over him.
I agree. So as far as the end of the year outlook for Lombardi Trophy, where do you think he falls in the division with Ed, Laura, Eddie, and himself? Where's he going to end?
I absolutely believe that he'll be in the playoff conversation there. I don't know whether he'll take that division or not. They've all got a lot of draft picks. That is going to be a tough division. But yeah, I definitely believe that he'll be one of the wild card teams, if not the division winner.
Better believe Ed Mitchell is going to be wheeling and dealing, making that final playoff push. I have my rankings as Eddie winning the division, Lombardi Trophy coming in at 8-5, coming in second for the division, getting that wild card slot, and then Ed and unfortunately Laura at the bottom there. I think Ed's going to make some push, but classic Ed, he won't know if he wants to be in or out this year. So I think Lombardi Trophy, after a couple years of bad luck, I think this is his year to turn it around, make a late playoff push, and be a good team in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think he's done in the basement there. Back to being a competitor.
I agree. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Foot Bros podcast. Until next time.
That's it.